Welcome back, you gorgeous beings of the world and all the planets. In case there's somebody that's not from planet Earth up in here. Hi, it's Zolelwa here again, and this is episode 5 of Dr. Zolelwa Speaks. Well, season 1 anyway. Today, I will be reading a book called Parable of the Sower, and it's by Octavia E. Butler. About the book, here's the book. It's really beautiful cover. I love the cover art. And yeah, this book was loaned to me by a very good friend of mine, Mkulu Menzi. Thank you, Menzi. I still need to return it to you, and it will be returned. But I needed to add this book to season 1 of the show. And as soon as I'm done recording, I will bring it right back to you. But thank you. What a blessing. Mosquitoes. Being outside, man. Anyway, so what I'm going to do, like always, what I have been doing is reading the back of the book so that you guys can get a kind of feel, and then I'll jump straight in. We are coming apart. We're a rope breaking, a single strand at a time. America is a place of chaos where violence rules and only the rich and powerful are safe. Lauren Olamina, a young woman with the extraordinary power to feel the pain of others as her own, records everything she sees in this broken world in her journal. Then, one terrible night, everything alters beyond recognition, and Lauren must make her voice heard for the sake of those she loves. Soon, her vision becomes reality, and her dreams of a better way to live gain the power to change humanity forever. All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. Oh, my bookmark is a picture of me. I think I must have been like 4 here. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to be reading chapter 14. And it has no title. They're just chapters. So yeah, enjoy. Oh, there's a bit of background noise because I guess some neighbors are having some work done. But I hope you guys can still hear me clearly and you can hear the beautiful birds. Yeah, I wish I could go tell them to just like pause, but like maybe like they stop and start. So like, we'll see. I hope you guys can hear me well though. In order to rise from its own ashes, a phoenix first must burn. Earthseed, the Books of the Living. Saturday, July 31st, 2027, morning. Last night, when I escaped from the neighborhood, it was burning. The houses, the trees, the people, burning. Smoke awoke me, and I shouted down the hall to Corey and the boys. I grabbed my clothes and emergency pack and followed Corey as he herded the boys out. The bell never rang. Our watchers must have been killed before they could reach it. Everything was chaos. People running, screaming, shooting. The gate had been destroyed. Our attackers had driven an ancient truck through it. They must have stolen a truck just to crash it through our gate. I think they must have been pyro addicts. Bald people with painted heads, faces and hands, red faces, blue faces, green faces, screaming mouths, avid, crazy eyes, glittering in the firelight. They shot us and shot us and shot us. I saw Natalie Moss running, screaming, then pitching backward, her face half gone, her body still impelled forward. She fell flat on her back. She fell flat on her back and did not move again. I fell with her, caught up in her death. I lay there, dazed, struggling to move, to get up. Corey and the boys running ahead of me never noticed. They ran on. I got up, felt for my pack, found it, and ran. I tried not to see what was happening around me. Hearing the gunfire and the screams didn't stop me. A dead body, Edwin Dunn, didn't stop me. I bent, snatched up his gun, and kept running. Someone screamed near me, then tackled me, pulled me down. I fired the gun in reflexive terror and took the terrible impact in my own stomach. A green face hung above mine, mouth open, eyes wide, not yet feeling all his pain. I shot him again, terrified that his pain would immobilize me when he did feel it. It seemed that he took a long time to die. When I could move again, I pushed his body off me. I got up, still holding the gun, and ran for the wrecked gate. Best to be in the darkness outside, best to hide. I ran up Meredith Street, away from Durant Road, away from the fires and the shooting. I had lost track of Corey and the boys. I thought they would go towards the hills and not towards the center of town. Every direction was dangerous, but there was more danger where there were more people. In the night, a woman and 3 kids might look like a gift basket for food, money, and sex. North, towards the hills. North, through the dark streets to where the nearby hills and mountains blotted out the stars. And then what? I don't know. I couldn't think. I had never been outside the walls when it was so dark. My only hope of staying alive was to listen, hear any movement before it got too close to me, see what I could by starlight, be as quiet as I could. I walked down the middle of the street, looking and listening, and trying to avoid potholes and chunks of broken asphalt. There was a little other trash. Anything that would burn, people would use as fuel. Anything that could be reused or sold had been gathered. Corey used to comment on that. Poverty, she said, had made the streets cleaner. Where was she? Where had she taken my brothers? Were they all right? Had they even gotten out of the neighborhood? I stopped. Were my brothers back there? Was Curtis? I hadn't seen him at all, though if anyone were going to survive this insanity, it would be the Talcotts. But we had no way of finding each other. Sound. Footsteps. 2 pairs of running footsteps. I stayed where I was, frozen in place. No sudden moves to draw attention to me. Had I already been seen? Could I be seen? A figure of darker darkness in an otherwise empty street? The sound was behind me. I listened and knew that it was off to one side, approaching, passing. 2 people running down a side street, indifferent to the noise they made, indifferent to woman-shaped shadows. I let out a breath and drew another through my mouth because I could get more air with less sound that way. I couldn't go back to the fires and the pain. If Corey and the boys were there, they were dead, or worse, captive. But they had been ahead of me. They must have gotten out. Corey wouldn't let them come back to look for me. There was a bright glow in the air over what had been our neighborhood. If she had gotten the boys away, All she had to do was look back to know that she didn't want to go back. Did she have her Smith & Wesson? I wished I had it, and the 2 boxes of ammunition that went with it. All I had was the knife in my pack and Edwin Dunn's old .45 automatic. And all the ammunition I had for it was in it. If it was empty, if it wasn't empty, I knew the gun. It had several rounds. It held 7 rounds. I had fired it twice. How many times Edwin Dunn fired it before I had? Oof. Okay, I'm gonna start this. I guess we're just gonna edit. I need to start this part again. Okay. I let out a breath and drew another through my mouth because I could get more air with less sound that way. I let out a breath and drew another through my mouth because I could get more air with less sound that way. I couldn't go back to the fires and the pain. If Corey and the boys were there, they were dead, or worse, captive. But they had been ahead of me. They must have gotten out. Corey wouldn't let them come back to look for me. There was a bright glow in the air over what had been our neighborhood. If she had gotten the boys away, all she had to do was look back to know that she didn't want to go back. Did she have her Smith & Wesson? I wished I had it, and the 2 boxes of ammunition that went with it. All I had was the knife in my pack and Edwin Dunn's old .45 automatic. All the ammunition I had for it was in it, if it wasn't empty. I knew the gun. It held 7 rounds. I'd fired it twice. How many times had Edwin Dunn fired it before someone shot him? I didn't expect to find out until morning. I had a flashlight in my pack, but I didn't intend to use it unless I could be certain I wouldn't be making a target of myself. During the day, the sight of the bulge in my pocket would be enough to make people think twice about robbing or raping me. But during the night, the blue gun would be all but invisible, even in my hand. If it were empty, I could only use it as a club, and the moment I hit someone with it, I might as well hit myself. If I lost consciousness for any reason during a fight, I would lose all my possessions, if not my life. Tonight, I had to hide. Tomorrow, I would have to try bluff as much as possible. Most people wouldn't insist on my shooting them just to test whether the gun was loaded. For the street poor, unable to afford medical care, even a minor wound might be fatal. I am one of the street poor now, not as poor as some, but homeless, alone, full of books, and ignorant of reality. Unless I meet someone from the neighborhood, there's no one I can afford to trust, no one to back me up. 3 miles to the hills. I kept to the starlit back streets, listening and looking around. The gun was in my hand. I meant to keep it there. I could hear dogs barking and snarling, fighting somewhere, not far away. I was in a cold sweat. I had never been more terrified in my life, yet nothing attacked me. Nothing found me. I didn't go all the way to the hills. Instead, I found a burned-out, unwalled house a few blocks before the end of Meredith Street. Fear of dogs had made me keep an eye open for anything that might provide shelter. The house was a ruin, a plundered ruin. It wasn't safe to walk into, with or without a light. It was a roofless collection of upright black bones. But it had been built up off the ground. 5 concrete steps led up to what had been the front porch. There should be a way under the house. What if other people were under it? I walked around it, listening, trying to see. Then, Instead of daring to crawl under, I settled in what was left of the attached garage. A corner of it was still standing, and there was enough rubble in front of that corner to conceal me if I didn't show a light. Also, if I was surprised, I could get out of the garage faster than I could crawl out from under the house. The concrete floor could not collapse under me as the wooden floor might in what was left of the house proper. It was as good as I was going to get, and I was exhausted. I didn't know whether I could sleep, but I had to rest. Morning now. What shall I do? I did sleep a little, but I kept startling awake. Every sound woke me. The wind, the rats, insects, then squirrels and birds. I don't feel rested, but I'm a little less exhausted. So what shall I do? How is it that we had never established an outside meeting place, somewhere where the family could reunite after a disaster? I remember suggesting it to Dad that we do that, but he had never done anything about it. And I hadn't pushed the idea as I should have. Poor God shaping, lack of forethought. What now? Now I have to go home. I don't want to. The idea scares me to death. It's taken me a long time just to write the world. It's taken me a long time just to write the word, home. But I have to know about my brothers and about Corey and Curtis. I don't know how I can help if they're hurt or being held by someone. I don't know what might be waiting for me back in the neighborhood. More painted faces? The police? I'm in trouble either way. If the police are there, I'll have to hide my gun before I go in. My gun and my small amount of money. Carrying a gun can win you a lot of unwanted attention from the police if you catch them in the wrong mood. Yet everyone who has one carries it. The trick, of course, is not to get caught carrying it. On the other hand, if the painted faces are still there, I can't go in at all. How long do those people stay high on pyro and fire? Do they hang around after their fun to steal whatever's left and maybe kill a few more people? No matter. I have to go and see. I have to go home. Saturday, July 31st, 2027, evening. I have to write. I don't know what else to do. The others are asleep now, but it isn't dark. I'm on watch because I couldn't sleep if I tried. I'm jittery and crazed. I can't cry. I want to get up and just run away from everything. But there isn't any away. I have to write. There is nothing familiar left to me but writing. God is change. I hate God. I have to write. There were no unburned houses back in the neighborhood, although some were burned worse than others. I don't know where the police or firefighters ever came. If they had come, they were gone when I got there. The neighborhood was wide open and crawling with scavengers. I stood at the gate, staring in as strangers picked among the black bones of our homes. The ruins were still smoking, but men, women, and children were all over them, digging through them, picking fruit from the trees, stripping our dead, quarreling or fighting over new acquisitions, stashing things away in clothing or bundles. Who were these people? I put my hand on the gun in my pocket. It had 4 rounds left in it, and I went in. I was grimy from lying in dirt and ashes all night. I might not be noticed. I saw 3 women from an unwalled part of Durant Road digging through what was left of the Yanis house. They were laughing and throwing around some chunks of wood and plaster. Where were Shani Yanis and her daughters? Where were her sisters? I walked through the neighborhood, looking past the human maggots, trying to find some of the people I had grown up with. I found dead ones. Edwin Dunn lay where he had when I took his gun, but now he was shirtless and shoeless. His pockets had been turned out. The ground was littered with ash-covered corpses, some burned or half blown apart by automatic weapons fire. Dried or nearly dried blood had pooled in the street. 2 men were prying loose our emergency bell. The bright, clear, early morning sunlight made the whole scene less real somehow, more nightmare-like. I stopped in front of our house and stared at the 5 adults and children who were picking through the ruins of it. Who were these vultures? Did the fire draw them? Is that what the street poor do? Run to fire and hope to find a corpse to strip? There was a dead green face on our front porch. I went up the steps and stood looking at him, at her. The green face was a woman, tall, lean, bold, but female. And what had she died for? What was the point of all of this? Leave her alone. A woman who had a pair of Corey's shoes in her hand strode up to me. She died for all of us. Leave her alone. I've never in my life wanted to kill another human being. Get the hell out of my way, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I don't know how I looked, but the thief backed away. I stepped over the green face and went into the carcass of our home. The other thieves looked at me, but none of them said anything. One pair, I noticed, was a man with a small boy. The man was dressing the boy in a pair of my brother Gregory's jeans. The jeans were much too big, but the man belted them and rolled them up. And where was Gregory, my clownish smartass of a baby brother? Where was he? Where was everyone? The roof of our house had fallen in. Most things had burned. Kitchen, living room, dining room, my room. The floor wasn't safe to walk on. I saw one of the scavengers fall through, give a surprised yell, then climb, unhurt, onto a floor joist. Nothing left in my room could be salvaged. Ashes. A heat-distorted metal bed frame. The broken metal and ceramic remains of my lamp. Bunches of ashes that had been clothing or books. Many books were not burned through. They were useless, but they had been packed so tightly together that the fire had burned in deeply from the edges and the spines. Rough circles of unhurried paper remained, surrounded by ash. I didn't find a single whole page. The back 2 bedrooms had survived better. That was where the scavengers were, and where I headed. I found bundled pairs of my father's socks, folded shorts and t-shirts, and an extra holster that I could use for the 45. All this I found in or under the unpromising-looking remains of Dad's chest of drawers. Most things were burned beyond use, but I stuffed the best of what I found into my pack. The man with the child came over to scavenge beside me, and somehow, perhaps because of the child, because this stranger in his filthy rags was someone's father too, I didn't mind. The little boy watched the 2 of us, his small brown face expressionless. He did look a little like Gregory. I dug a dried apricot out of my pack and held it out to him. He couldn't have been more than 6, but he wouldn't touch the food until the man told him to. Good discipline. But at the man's nod, he snatched the apricot, bit off a tiny taste, then stuffed the rest into his mouth whole. So, in the company with 5 strangers, I plundered my family's home. The ammunition under the closet door in my parents' room had burned. Had no doubt exploded. The closet was badly charred. So much for the money hidden there. I took dental floss, soap, and a jar of petroleum jelly from my parents' bedroom. Everything else was already gone. I managed to gather 1 set of outer clothing, each for Corey and my brothers. In particular, I found shoes for them. There was a woman scavenging among Marcus's shoes, and she glared at me, but she kept quiet. My brothers had run out of the house in their pajamas. Corey had thrown on a coat. I had been the last to get out of the house because I had risked stopping to grab jeans a sweatshirt, and shoes, as well as my emergency pack. I could have been killed. If I had thought about what I was doing, if I had to think, no doubt I would have been killed. I reacted the way I had trained myself to react, though my training was far from up to date, more memory than anything else. I hadn't practiced late at night for ages, yet my self-administered training had worked. Now, if I could get these clothes to Corey and my brothers, I might be able to make up for their lack of training, especially if I could get the money under the rocks by the lemon tree. I put clothes and shoes into a salvaged pillowcase, looked around for blankets, and couldn't find a one. They must have been grabbed early. All the more reason to get to the lemon tree money. I went out to the peach tree, and being tall, managed to reach a couple of nearly ripe peaches that other scavengers had missed. Then I looked around as though for something more to take, and surprised myself by almost crying at the sight of Corey's big, well-tended back garden trampled into the ground. Peppers, tomatoes, squashes, carrots, cucumbers, lettuce, melons, sunflowers, beans, corn, much of which wasn't ripe yet, but what hadn't been stolen had been destroyed. I scavenged a few carrots, a couple of handfuls of sunflower seeds from flower heads that lay on the ground, and a few bean pods from vines Corey had planted to run up the sunflower stalks, and corn plants. I took what was left, the way I thought a late arriving scavenger would, and I worked my way towards the lemon tree. When I reached it, heavy with little green lemons, I hunted for any with a hint of paling, of yellow. I took a few from the tree and from the ground. Corey had planted shade-loving flowers at the base of the tree, and they had thrived there. She and my father had scattered small rounded boulders among these in a way that seemed no more than decorative. A few of these had been turned over, crushing the flowers near them. In fact, the rock with the money under it had been turned over, but the 2 or 3 inches of dirt over the money packet, triple wrapped and heat sealed in plastic, was undisturbed. I snatched the packet in no more time than it had taken to pick up a couple of lemons a moment before. First, I spotted the hiding place. Then, I snatched up the money packet along with a handful of dirt. Then, eager to leave but terrified of drawing attention to myself, I picked up a few more lemons and hunted around for more food. The figs were hard and green instead of purple, and the persimmons were yellow-green instead of orange. I found a single ear of corn left on a downed stalk and used it to stuff the money packet deeper into my blanket pack. Then I left. With my pack on my back and the pillowcase in my left arm, resting on my hip like a baby, I walked down the driveway to the street. I kept my right hand free for the gun still in my pocket. I had not taken time to put on the holster. There were more people within the walls than there had been when I arrived. I had to walk past most of them to get out. Others were leaving their loads, and I tried to follow them without quite attaching myself to any particular group. This meant that I moved more slowly than I would have chosen to. I had time to look at the corpses and see what I didn't want to see. Richard Moss, stark naked, lying in a pool of his own blood. His house, closer to the gate than ours, had been burned to the ground. Only the chimney stuck up, blackened and naked from the rubble. Where were his 2 surviving wives, Karen and Zara? Or had they survived? Where were all his many children? Little Robin Beta, naked, filthy, bloody between her legs, cold, bony, barely pubescent. Yet she might have married my brother Marcus one day. She might have been my sister. She had always been such a bright, sharp, great little kid, all serious and knowing. 12 going on 35, Corey used to say. She always smiled when she said it. Russell Dorey, Robin's grandfather. Only his shoes had been taken. His body had been almost torn apart by automatic weapons fire. An old man and a child. What had painted faces gotten for all their killing? She died for us, the scavenger woman had said of the green face. Some kind of insane burn the rich movement, Keith had said. We've never been rich, but to the desperate, we looked rich. We were surviving, and we had our war. Did the community die so that addicts could make a help the poor political statement? There were other corpses. I didn't get a close look at most of them. They littered the front yards, the street, and the island. There was no sign of our emergency bell now. The men who had wanted it had carried it away, perhaps to be sold for its metal. I saw Layla Yanis, Shani's oldest daughter. Like Robin, she had been raped. I saw Michael Talcott, one side of his head smashed in. I didn't look around for Curtis. I was terrified that I might not see him lying nearby. I was almost out of control, as it was, and I couldn't draw attention to myself. I couldn't be anything more than another scavenger hauling away treasure. Bodies passed under my eyes. Jeremy Bater, one of Robin's brothers, Philip Moss, George Sue, his wife and his oldest son, Joanna Montoya, Ruben Quantamanilla, Lydia Cruz. Lydia was 8 years old. She had been raped too. I made it back through the gate. I didn't break down. I hadn't seen Corey or my brothers in the carnage. That didn't mean they were there. That didn't mean they weren't there, but I hadn't seen them. They might have been alive. Curtis might be alive. Where could I look for them? The Talcotts had relatives living in Robledo, but I didn't know where. Somewhere on the other side of River Street. I couldn't look for them, though Curtis might have gone to them. Why hadn't anyone else stayed to salvage what they could? I circled the neighborhood, keeping the wall in sight, then made a greater circle. I saw no one, or at least no one I knew. I saw other street poor who stared at me. Then, because I didn't know what else to do, I headed back towards my burned garage on Meredith Street. I couldn't call the police. All the phones I knew were slag. No strangers would let me use their phone if they had phones, and I didn't know anyone whom I could pay to call and trust to make the call. Most people would avoid me, or be tempted to keep my money and never call. And anyway, if the police have ignored what's been done to my neighborhood so far, if such a fire and so many corpses can be ignored, why should I go to them? What would they do? Arrest me? Take my cash as their fee? I wouldn't be surprised. Best to stay clear of them. But where was my family? Someone called my name. I turned around, my hand in my pocket, and I saw Zara Moss and Harry Bater, Richard Moss's younger wife, and Robin Bater's older brother. They were an unlikely pair, but they were definitely together. They managed, without touching each other, to give the appearance of all but clinging to each other. Both were blood-spattered and ragged. I looked at Harry's battered, swollen face and remembered that Joanne had loved him, or thought she had, and that he wouldn't marry her and go with her to Oliver because he believed what Dad believed about Oliver. "Are you all right?" he asked me. I nodded, remembering Robin. Did he know? Russell, Dory, Robin, and Jeremy. "They beat you up?" I asked, feeling stupid and awkward. I didn't want to tell him his grandfather, brother, and sister were dead. "I had to fight my way out last night. I was lucky they didn't shoot me." He swayed, looked around. "Let's sit on the curb." Both Zara and I looked around, made sure nobody else was nearby. We sat with Harry between us. I sat on my pillowcase of clothing. Zara and Harry were fully dressed, in spite of their coating of blood and dirt, but they carried nothing. Did they have nothing, or did they leave their things somewhere? perhaps with whatever was left of their families. And where was Zara's little girl, Bibi? Did she know that Richard Moss was dead? Everyone's dead, Zara whispered, as though speaking into my thoughts. Everyone. Those painted bastards killed them all. No, Harry shook his head. We got out. There'll be some others. He sat with his face in his hands, and I wondered whether he was more hurt than I had thought. I wasn't sharing any serious pain with him. Have either of you seen my brothers or Corey? I asked. Dead, Zara whispered, like my Bibi. All dead. I jumped. No, not all of them. No. Did you see them? I saw most of the Montoya family, Harry said. He wasn't talking to me as much as musing out loud. We saw them last night. They said Joanna was dead. The rest of them were going to walk to Glendale, where their relatives live. But, I began, and I saw Letitia Sue. She had been stabbed 40 or 50 times. But did you see my brothers? I had to ask. They're all dead. I told you, Zara said. They got out, but the pains caught them and dragged them back and killed them. I saw. One of them had me down, and I saw. She was being raped when she saw my family dragged back and killed? Was that what she meant? Was it true? I went back this morning, I said. I didn't see their bodies. Didn't see any of them. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. I saw your mother. All of them. I saw. Zara hugged herself. I didn't want to see, but I saw. We all sat without talking. I don't know how long we sat there. Now and then, someone walked past us and looked at us. Some dirty, ragged persons with bundles. Cleaner people in little bunches rode past us on bikes. A group of 3 rode past on motorcycles, their electric hum and whine strange in the quiet street. When I got up, the other 2 looked at me. For no reason except habit, I picked up my pillowcase. I don't know what I meant to do with the things in it. It had occurred to me, though, that I should get back to my garage before someone else settled there. I wasn't thinking very well. It was as though that garage was home now, and all I wanted in the world was to be there. Harry got up and almost fell down again. He bent and threw up into the gutter. The sight of his throwing up grabbed at me, and I only managed to look away in time to avoid joining him. He finished, spat, turned his face to Zara and me, and coughed. I feel like hell, he said. They hit me in the head last night, Zara explained. They hit him in the head last night, Zara explained. He got away from the guy who was, well, you know. He got me away, but they hurt him. There's a burned garage where I slept last night, I said. It's a long walk, but he can rest there. We can all rest there. Zara took my pillowcase and carried it. Maybe something in it could do her some good. We walked on either side of Harry and kept him from stopping or wandering off or staggering too much. Somehow, we got him to the garage. So this is like one of those end of the world books. I can't think of the name, but it says here, there's somebody who's written here, brilliant, endlessly rich, pairs well with 1984 or The Handmaid's Tale. And I know, like, I've watched The Handmaid's Tale. It's like this post-apocalyptic, like, the world has changed now, and, you know, so it's like one of those. But yeah, Octavia Butler is a gorgeous black woman. Like, I don't know if you can see. If not, then like I'll have to put the picture up. But yeah, like this book, I've finished reading it before. I'm busy rereading it now again, and it's a great book. Like, as much as like I read like quite a hectic part of the book now for you all, but it's really a dope book. And I would definitely suggest like you find it and you read it. It's yeah, I enjoy this book. I really enjoyed this book. Yeah, and I guess in closing, I want to read, there's like this passage in the first chapter that I read. It was at the back of the book, but I want to read it in closing. All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. So yeah, that's it for this book. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed. Bye.